Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. And today we have got a special guest. We've got Todd Furno. Todd is the co-founder of AdCaddy, a mobile app that keeps your personal inbox free of brand clutter by giving you a new email address and experience to use for all of your consumer needs. All right, Todd, I'm excited to have you on the show. We had a chance to chat a little bit beforehand.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell the audience how you got into this line of work as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. I started, 11 years at Home Depot, and I was a merchant. So you kind of buy and sell and launch a bunch of products. And through that process, and then when I left there and started two other businesses prior to AdCaddy, just kind of noticed when you launch a product, customer acquisition is a very difficult thing. And then once you have that customer, you want to maintain or retain the relationship with them. And there's kind of a missing link because right now all brands use email to stay connected. And if you were to ask a brand, hey, do you want 100,000 email addresses or 100,000 Facebook followers? They'll take the email addresses all day.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that's the strongest connection, we wanted to create this kind of brand manager that allows a consumer to manage their brand relationship life by making it uninterruptive to their personal inbox as a standalone platform where
Mm-hmm.
they can control when they engage with these brands. And then at the same time, have it highly organized towards marketing emails by brand and then looking at shipping and receipts at a central location.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of through the years of launching products and trying to get the word out, just noticing this kind of gap in the marketplace as far as how people stay connected. And the funny balance here, Josh, is, you think about the brand has to get their communication out. No matter if you wrote a book or you launched a new product, you have to let consumers know. On the flip side, the consumers actually want to know this information. And that's kind of the trick is, they actually want to stay connected. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap to say, okay, right now it's not efficient. They kind of annoy each other in this process. So let's create a way where the consumer's in control, and then they'll actually want to engage with their brands or who they're listening to.
So this is a really unique, innovative idea, but it sounds like it's very difficult to get to a place where you're actually making money. So what do you do in a company like this where you have to kind of start from scratch and it's new to the market? It's not like opening a hair salon or a smoothie shop where you kind of know what to expect. How'd you go about making that happen, and what is the process? I mean, did you raise money along the way, or what did you do?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And, we may have to wait another 18 months before we raise money. And, a part of kind of advice that I've given myself and I think has worked really well is to stay as flexible as possible on spending until you have that product market fit, until you are ready to roll, whether you are opening a hair salon or you have an app that might take 3 years to get enough mass in order to monetize it. So we did raise capital between myself and a few others putting money in. They're kind of a friends and family round.
Mm-hmm.
We did about $500,000, and we'll roll into a seed round right now at about $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that stuff will flow into the business really around customer acquisition and building new technology in the app. So it still has some time to kind of monetize itself
Mm-hmm.
over the long haul.
So I've had several clients build apps and some app developers, and it's hard. It's hard to get critical mass and to actually make money. So what is the revenue model? I mean, should people who have regular companies develop an app or not? And why did you decide to do an app as opposed to just another way to distribute your idea?
Yeah. I wanted to do an app because we really look at it as a platform. So it's a platform to connect these consumers and brands. So ultimately, email is the beginning, but it'll be the place that they connect, whether it be, obviously it's receipts and shipping, but if they want to do any messaging or everything down the line to commerce, they can connect in the app for all updates, events, you name it. That maybe it's not in the email, but they send a coupon out and they can connect through AdCaddy. So, we did an app because, and it'll eventually be a desktop version as well, but
Mm-hmm.
we wanted something that's standalone. Think of LinkedIn or Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
where you now have those connections. So it had to be something that is a standalone platform in order to do that.
Okay. So I think I might be using one of your competitors right now. Years ago, maybe 5 years ago, someone introduced a product called Unroll.me.
Yep.
And, to be honest, I haven't checked my Unroll.me in probably 4 months. And
Yeah.
it's basically where everything that I kind of want to have, but I don't want to unsubscribe from, it goes
Yeah.
to this one thing called unroll. And so once a
Yeah.
day, I get an unroll email with, I don't know. How is yours different to some of the competition that's out there? And I think also
Yeah.
Google has a way to kind of Gmail to segment things, and each email has
Yeah.
a way to segment things. How is yours different than that?
Yeah, great question. So Unroll Me is good for kind of getting everything out of your inbox.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually recommend them. They're, a good company. They help you to kind of declutter anything that you don't want spam wise in your inbox. The problem and where we're different is we believe that people actually want to engage with brands. So when Nike comes out with a new shoe or there's a new event on Ticketmaster, keeping up with these things, there's kind of this fear of missing out that people have.
Mm-hmm.
So one area is making sure you're being a savvy shopper. Did I get the coupon? Do I know when the sale's happening for Pottery Barn?
Mm-hmm.
All these things that happen, but also new products, new events, like we said. So, we believe consumers want to stay engaged with their favorite brands. And that's a core idea.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else, really Unroll Me, Gmail is a way of just getting rid of all of that stuff. And the problem is once you get rid of all that, the brand still has to communicate to you. So now they're going to start texting you. They're going to, show up at your house. They're going to find another way. Your physical mailbox will get full like mine is today with, they're going to mail you things. So they still have to get this word out and it's never going to go away. So if we can give the control back to the consumer and let them control the flow of information, who they hear from, when they actually pick it up and look at it, now they actually feel like they're in control and they'll want to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Nike's your favorite brand or Patagonia, you're excited to see that new product they have coming out, or maybe it's a new promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our core belief. And that's what we think is very different and contrarian to the rest of the world is we actually are building an app that people want to look at advertising. They want to look at the marketing from their brands because they're in control. They're doing it on their terms, their time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the core difference. And the way we'll monetize it, I didn't answer your question earlier, is really around when you're flowing through these ads from the brands. We call it kind of a curated magazine because you're looking at all the unread emails, whether it's a new shipment notification or a new product. And we'll insert things that become exciting that we call discovery. Mm-hmm. And that is maybe a brand or a new item that you didn't know about. And we will get paid by, because it's a targeted digital ad, but mm-hmm. it's relevant because you're there to quote unquote shop or be a consumer and look at these brands. So it's good for both sides. The brands will get engagement and the consumers will find kind of new brands, new products that they didn't necessarily know about before. I always ask people, have you ever bought something on Instagram? People say, yeah, I've bought something on Instagram because they're really good at targeting ads. But the problem is you're not on Instagram to look at brands. You're on Instagram to look at friends and family and, new surf pictures. So we think with people in our app, they'll actually want to view them as long as they're in control.
So it's a place where people will go with a buying mindset. Like they're there to shop.
Basically. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's kind of
and
like
discover. So that's how we'll monetize it over time with opt-in from the consumer. So
it's kind of like, as I'm thinking about this, the standard old fashioned mall, you go to the mall and you walk around the mall and there's about, 100 shops.
Yeah.
And now you've kind of curated your own digital mall and you go there and you're walking around your digital mall at the shops. You kind of like to shop at, see what's going on.
It's only your brands in that entire mall. And you're seeing everything that they put in the window, which would be new items, promotions, discounts. So it allows you to stay up on them. And, if let's say you just bought a suitcase from Toomey and you're not going to shop for another 90 days, we give the consumer control where you can kind of snooze a brand for a period of time. So that feature will come out. So we're going to give all types of controls to where, everyone can still stay connected and do it on when it makes sense for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my wife's email inbox every once in a while. I'll see her inbox and I'll have a heart attack because she does the majority of the shopping for our family, and so I know that a lot of the things that she tracks, receipts, shipping, all that stuff, it's insane. But she can't delete it; she wants to keep it. So, well, it's interesting. Well, let's get to more broader, beyond just your product. So you mentioned customer acquisitions. So when you started your company from nothing, how did you gain attention and start to acquire new leads and actually get to, because it's a long road. So how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. And I'll back up one step and kind of talk about product market fit. Because we've been out for about 18 months and it's really been a beta for those 18 months. And that's why you want to kind of scale back on the spending and be smart about how you're going about it. Product market fit is the most important thing for a startup or any entrepreneur, making sure that you have a product that the customer wants and it's not confusing. So initial product for us wasn't email. It was just more geared towards brands could come on, produce advertising, and consumers could receive that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they were still getting the same ad from an email. And so we had to provide a core utility. And that's the thing for apps. You have to give the consumer a core utility that on day one they could use.
Mm-hmm.
And look, that's the case for any product, but specifically the app world. It's not just about giving somebody an experience. Experience was kind of like early 2000s. Now you got to change their life. You got to give them a core utility that's going to make their life better for the long haul. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good kind of mental block there. So we've gone through 3 different iterations of product market fit, and don't need to get into each one, but those iterations, if we had a bunch of money early on, we would have dove into the first iteration. Mm-hmm. And it was the wrong one. Mm-hmm. So as we pivoted, whether it's small or large, being more lean allowed us to be smart about, hey, we didn't just invest $1 million in our first idea. We're investing the money as we know the market receives it and wants it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really critical. We can talk more about that, but then you kind of lead into, okay, now we have a product that we think people want. How do we go get the customer acquisition? Mm-hmm. And it's a really simple thing of looking at, okay, what's your customer acquisition cost? And you can test all types of theories around Facebook and Instagram, Google from a digital perspective. And then, you can do email blasts through AdCaddy or through, your ESP. Mm-hmm. There's all types of ways, but understanding that and how hard it's going to be or how easy it's going to be and that cost against how much money you can make against that customer, right? So kind of not necessarily the lifetime value, but just the revenue per user on almost an annual basis. Mm-hmm. So those 2 things are pretty critical.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think and it's something that I preach as well with the companies I work with, is that if they're really new, if they're startups, if they're new ideas, don't invest a ton of actually time and energy and money into building a bunch of systems to scale an idea that hasn't been tested. If you only have 3 customers, maybe you want to give it more time to get the feedback from the customers to find out what would make the product or service better before you invest a ton of money or time scaling something that is a few degrees off, the wrong way.
That's the hardest thing in the world to tell anybody in a startup, because they're ready to go, and they're nervous and anxious, and it takes a lot of discipline to kind of sit in the idea and make sure that's product market fit before you run after it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you love your own product, you love your own service.
Yeah.
You have to give it time for, I guess, the market to love it.
Yeah.
And show
Absolutely.
that they do.
Absolutely. Beyond the acquisition, a big learning is around retention. So now you have this customer, and for us, we need them to come back daily and weekly. But if you sell vacuums, maybe you only need to buy once every 5 years. But typical products, you want somebody to come back. Let's say you're selling a clothing line, you want them to buy every season. So how do you get somebody retained in your business? And that's a very important strategy to think through. I think when I first started, 5 years ago in this world of, entrepreneurship and startups, I was just thinking, how do we just get them into the funnel and have them buy? But then the most important piece really is after that, customer service and all the things that flow on to make sure that they love your product. They want to tell other people about your product. They want to buy more as you launch more items. Mm-hmm. The retention side almost becomes more important than the acquisition.
Mm-hmm. So I've got to believe there's lots of competition in this space. How do you, you're all about trying to stay above the noise. How do you stay above the noise of all the other ideas that are floating out there? Like, I'm just curious as to how you differentiate and stay above that noise.
Yeah. For me, I just kind of focus on the thing that I know to be true, which is advertising is not annoying, the interruption is, and that people want to stay connected with their brands. And so what can I do to simplify that message and deliver that promise to the consumer to say, we'll allow you to not miss out on the things you don't want to miss out on, connect to your brands, because it's kind of unoptional, or it's not optional at this point, right? If you're checking out at Nike.com, you have to give them your email address. And now forevermore, you're going to get a marketing email from them. And so if you can control that stuff of when you get it and, how you receive it, how often, and then where it's going, where it's uninterruptive, we believe that belief will get us a long way. I mean, we don't look at Gmail as competition. We think they do personal email extremely well. And we want them to continue down that path. We just want to take branded email and be the best experience a consumer can have. So by giving them a new AdCaddy email address in a way that, in a standalone platform for that to flow into, we think just focusing on that core mission and not a bunch of other stuff will make us successful.
Mm-hmm. So what could you say on a broader market for those, because a lot of people, me included, we acquire a customer or a lead and we want them to stick around for the long haul because we've got other things we want to help them with, products, services, deals, offers. What are some things you've found that actually keep people engaged for the long haul? What helps for that?
Yeah. From a retention perspective, I'd say kind of holding their hand, because you got to think they have hundreds or thousands of other people, right? In your case, brands or whatever it might be that are talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you hold their hand and make sure that they're comfortable as they go through this process?
Mm-hmm.
So I call it customer service. So that's a very broad term. But I think, we assume because we know our product so well that they know it at the same level, and that they're comfortable going to step B, because it's really simple. You just click that button or do this task. But ultimately allowing them to kind of thinking of them as, hey, this is the first time they've ever seen this or heard this. Holding their hand is kind of what I always say is, making sure that they know where to go next, the next step in the process, and they're very comfortable throughout it. And then sending reminders on their cadence. So it may feel like, well, I sent them a communication, I didn't hear anything, or I didn't get the follow-up I want. I don't want to annoy them. And I think that's a good balance to have. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, they may be waiting for you as somebody they rely on for the information. So following up with that communication, think back to when you didn't get shipment notifications. So you buy something, you're like, is it coming? How long is it going to take? Now we're so spoiled with Amazon. It's like, well, I know if I buy in 2 days, it's going to come. Mm-hmm. But 10 years ago, you'd buy something, you say, well, I never got an email that told me it was coming for a receipt, and I never got a shipment notification. I hope it shows up in like 3 weeks from now. Mm-hmm. Maybe forgot about it. Well, if you take that same mentality on anything you're doing for a customer and say, how do I have that same level of process to walk them through, hold their hand, make them feel very comfortable, they're going to come back. They're going to trust you. And that kind of builds the trust there.
Well, I've had a few clients over the years who've been asking me specific questions about, should I raise money? Should I not raise money? Should I get a line of credit? Should I get investors? What should I do with my startup company? Any advice that you'd give for people about whether to raise money or not? Is there certain types of businesses that are better for raising money versus other ones?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to kind of give two streams of advice. Okay. One is, you'll hear people, if you talk about raising money, especially in the tech space, they'll say, raise twice as much money as you think you need. Mm-hmm. And I've done that before, and it can be extremely dangerous. And here's why. We talked about this earlier. You have your first, what you think is a good idea, and it might need a slight change, right? Anything that you see out there, including, Uber, they didn't start exactly as you see them today. Mm-hmm. They had to make some level of pivot. Instagrams were the best story. It had nothing to do with what it is and its format. And he had a massive pivot. Well, if you raise a lot of money early, you're going to put all the money into that idea you think is right, and you're just going to fight to make it right. And then you have this friction and tension to make it right. So raising too much money early can be actually pretty dangerous. So my sense is, you kind of think of this rubber band that you're stretching, and you stretch it as far as you possibly can until it might break, and then you raise money, right? Or then you hire the next person, or you do the next task that you need. And so by stretching it as far as possible, it really forces some unique things that you're gonna figure it out. Essentially, it's like, oh well, we need a developer to do this. Well, why don't I go learn how to develop? So there's just these things that you kind of take on yourself, versus you raise money and you end up just burning that cash. Whether it's on the wrong idea or something that you probably didn't need to do that early. I'm just a bigger proponent of, until you have product market fit and you know that the people want it and they're screaming for it, then you throw fuel on the fire, right? But before then, it's very dangerous. Which is not traditional advice. Most people tell you, raise a bunch of money, raise it fast. There's a ton of money on the street, but you see this money moving more towards late stage companies because investors have been burned so much that they're pushing the money into later stage companies. Later stage just means it's fuel on the fire. You figured out product market fit, it's working, customers want it. So now let's throw fuel on this fire, and here's some cash. So that is easy money to get to some degree, but you have to get that product market fit proper until you can get there.
No, that's good advice. I think the other little nugget of wisdom there is it's okay to set boundaries or constrictions or restrictions on you, because that's where innovations and ideas come. If you got $1 million, you're going to make decisions maybe loose, or if you have 50 grand and it's all your own money,
Yeah.
make decisions a little bit differently, and
Yeah.
that's going to kind of force you
Yeah.
that
Another
pressure.
good way to prove that point out is take a $50,000 budget and $1 million budget for marketing.
Mhm.
How would I spend 50 and how would I spend $1 million? And that will tell you everything you need to know. I mean, as you do those two, you're like, well, in this one, I'm really wasting a lot of money. You know, you're like, well, I'll just do a budget of X on Facebook or Google, when really you needed to go a different direction in order to reach your particular customer.
Mhm.
You know, Facebook and Google will probably still be part of that, but ultimately it's going to be a little bit different. So budgeting at 50,000 and $1 million, it'll tell you everything you need to know. It's really surprising.
That's a good little test. I think, yeah, I'll run that myself. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what's one thing that I didn't ask you that you want to leave the audience with before we sign off today?
Yeah, I mean, product market fit we've been talking about, but I think it's super important, and we kind of hit on why. But I would say making sure that your customer has exactly the solution that they want. And when you think about that, there's two ways I look at. You know, I consider myself a product developer. So whether it be a physical item or a technology, there's two things going on. When you talk to a customer, you can say, what is your problem with this product that you don't like? Or what's a problem in general that you might have? Mm-hmm. They're going to tell you everything you need to know about the problem. And that's the most important input. But you, as the entrepreneur, have to think about, how do I turn this into a creative solution for them? They will never give you the creative solution. If they do, you're probably either too late to the party, or it's probably not the right solution. So that's where you have to do the magic, is figure out, what problem are you trying to solve for them? If you're not solving a problem, then you probably need to go back to the drawing board. Mm-hmm. And then once you have that input, it will come to you as far as how you creatively solve it. And it's actually simpler than you think. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the biggest thing. As you're going through product market fit, talk to your customers, see what they want, see how they react to your ideas or this particular thing you're trying to solve. Then go do the work on how do you creatively solve that? Because that's where the magic happens, and kind of the creativeness, which, look, everyone can be an artist. You'll figure it out once you have all that input. It just kind of happens. It's hard to describe.
Well, this kind of leads me to a follow-up question now. So, yeah. So how do you get the best information from your customers? So for instance, if I send out a survey, I'm going to get, a very small percentage of my audience to respond to that. And it might not even be the best data. And so, especially for those who have really small lists right now, and they might get 5 responses or 10 responses, which is not statistically significant. So what is the best way to mine that data from your buyers or leads?
Good question. So I'll give 2 examples. Let's say you want to make a housekeeping cart for a hotel. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've actually done this in the past, so it's a fun example. Mm-hmm. We would go into the hotels and we would talk to the management staff and the housekeeping staff and say, what problems do you see with housekeeping carts, right? You see them in the hallways, housekeepers use them to clean the hotel rooms. You would hear very consistently over 2 or 3 hotels, which is not statistically relevant to your point. You would hear very consistently, wall damage is the number 1 problem that we have with these carts. Is, they want to get them out of the guest way, so they're pushing them to the side. It's hitting the wall, and we spend $20,000 a year fixing wall damage. Like, oh, well, that's interesting. Again, that's the problem. That's the input. Then we'd go back to the drawing board and say, well, how do we create something that is a roller system that drops down to the floor and hits the baseboard and doesn't damage the wall? So really simple. You don't need statistically relevant information, and you can kind of turn that into a creative problem. And you might have to talk to 2 or 3 hotels before you get some level of answer around, well, here's the problems that we have, like we described. But on the flip side, if you have an app like AdCaddy and you've got thousands or millions of customers using it, and you need their input on it, I like A/B testing. And so you can do, hey, here's one way of doing the solution, and here's the second way of doing it. And let's see through data how people respond to that. Mm-hmm. And that's really the best way, because it gets you actually doing it versus just talking about it. And so you physically have to perform both A and B tasks, and then you can get the data back on which one worked better. I can't do that with the housekeeping cart, but I can do it with AdCaddy. And so that's kind of the difference here, is A/B testing really can go a long way in that when you're trying to test something new.
Interesting. I was suspecting you were going to say surveys, and you did the opposite. 2 different ways. So one is just specifically asking your potential buyers what they want, and they'll tell you, or the other one would be sell A, B, and then
Yep.
just find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And just look at the data and let the data drive it. Like, where are they engaging more? Surveys can be good. You have to be really good at, architecting the survey and getting statistically relevant, to your point. But I think surveys are good. I mean, you can get some good information back on, are people willing to do this? The problem is, and this is actually a good lesson from Netflix, they used to ask customers, what's your favorite movie? Where do you, what type of movie? And that was not at all correlated to what they watch. So they would say, well, my favorite movie is something very that made them seem educated, or, they watch these really cool movies, but ultimately they like romantic comedies, right? And so they weren't getting the engagement. So they actually stopped doing surveys or stopped allowing people to give input into it. Again, it goes back to, they may have intention on what they're saying, but they do something else. So that's the only problem with surveys you got to be really careful on.
So the money tells. So in case of Netflix, what they actually watch is going to tell
what
you.
What they're actually watching, yeah, that's all they had to look at.
Yeah, the need survey.
Yeah,
that's cool. Well, good. Well, Todd, this has been fun. I learned a lot, and you've got a unique perspective on business. Where can people find out more about you, AdCaddy, and where to find more information?
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to explore AdCaddy, adcaddy.com, and you can download the app in the App Store, both Google and Apple. It's live now. And for brands, you can tell your customers to get an account. And, we're seeing engagement rates. That's what we're trying to do. It's free for you as a brand. If you tell your customers to get an AdCaddy account and connect with you on AdCaddy, we're looking at 2 to 3x the open rates. So again, it's all about engagement.
Well, good. Well, Todd, again, thanks for being on the show today. Learned a lot. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching today's show. Tune in next week where we're going to be interviewing another expert like Todd, or one of my previous clients, or maybe I'll be giving you some advice, but we'll be helping you make more and work less in your business. And if you want a copy of that book right there behind me, that's Sam Carpenter's best-selling book, signed by him, then leave us a review. Go to any of the places that you're watching this, maybe it's iTunes, maybe YouTube, and leave us a comment, leave us a review, take a picture, and send it to us at info@workthesystem.com. And we'll be drawing one name out of a hat each week and mailing you a copy of that book. All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.